story. #1 the truck that passed me twice. I've been driving long haul for going on 19 years. I've seen black ice swallow a Peterbilt hole, watched a tornado cross I-70 less than half a mile ahead of me, and once pulled over to find a woman sitting barefoot in a ditch in the Nevada desert at 3 in the morning with no car, no phone, no explanation. Point is, I'm not a man who scares easily, and I'm not a man who makes things up. What happened on Route 9 in northern Montana changed that. Or rather, it didn't change me. It just made certain things I'd always half believed feel very, very real. It was late October. I was hauling a refrigerated load of produce up toward the Canadian border, running a route I'd done maybe 40 times. Flat land, 2 lanes, not a lot of company. The kind of road where you can see headlights coming from 8 miles out and you count them down like a slow countdown to nothing. Sky was clear, which surprised me because the forecast had called for weather. Temperature was dropping though. I could feel it through the door even with the heat cranked. I was somewhere around mile 220 when the truck showed up behind me. I noticed it because it was moving fast. Not crazy fast, but noticeably faster than I was, and I was doing 62 on a road where 70 was the limit. Big rig, running lights all lit up, a full spread across the cab roof. Looked like a Kenworth T680 or something close to it. White or maybe silver, hard to say at night. No markings I can make out. It closed the gap, then settled maybe 4 car lengths off my rear bumper and just stayed there. Now that's not unusual. A lot of guys draft off each other on open roads, save fuel. I didn't think anything of it. I keyed my CB, threw it to the most common channel, channel 19, and gave a friendly heads up. You got a seat in the front office up here, good buddy. Plenty of road if you want to come around. Nothing static. I figured he just didn't have his radio on, which is rare but happens. Tried again a minute later. Nothing. His lights held steady behind me and I let it go. About 20 minutes on, the Kenworth pulled left and accelerated. Clean pass, slow lane to hammer lane, not aggressive. His trailer cleared my cab, and he was gone, running north ahead of me. I watched his taillights shrink down to 2 red pinpoints, then disappear over a gentle rise. I was alone again. I turned up the radio, settled in, checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Here's where things went wrong. Maybe 3 minutes later, and I want you to understand there are no exits on that stretch of Route 9. None. I've driven it dozens of times and I know it the way I know the lines on my own hands. Maybe 3 minutes later, in my driver's side mirror, I saw headlights, moving fast, the same spread of running lights, the same pattern. I told myself it was a different truck. Told myself it was just a coincidence, another Kenworth heading north. Made total sense. Nothing to worry about. But I was already watching more carefully than I should have been, and I picked up my CB again. You northbound behind me on 9, you want to come around or are you comfortable back there? Static. The truck pulled up to the same 4-car length distance and held. Exact same position as before. I switched channels. Tried 17, tried 21, tried going back to 19. Anyone got a copy on the white Kenworth southbound on 9? Static on every channel. My heart was doing something it doesn't usually do, which is making itself known. You feel it in your throat. Then the truck passed me again. Same move. Left lane, smooth, controlled. I looked hard as it went by. White cab, same running light configuration, not a logo or a placard, anywhere I could see. The trailer was dry van, plain white, no markings. The driver's window was dark. I mean properly dark, like there was nothing behind it. I know a truck's cab has a high belt line, and at night from the side you often can't see in, but something about the quality of that darkness bothered me. Like the window wasn't just unlit, like there was nothing there to catch even a trace of reflection. His taillights went north again, disappeared over the same rise. I was doing 65 now without having meant to speed up, hands tight on the wheel. I started talking out loud just to hear a human voice, even if it was my own. Okay, different truck. 2 Kenworths on the same road. You've seen 3 of the same model in a single hour before. This is nothing. 7 minutes passed. In my mirror, headlights. I didn't touch the CB that time. I just watched. The truck came up at the same rate, settled at the same distance, ran behind me for exactly as long as the other times, and then passed me again in the exact same lane with the exact same motion. I punched it, got up to 80, which is more than I like on an empty 2-lane at midnight, watched my mirrors, nothing behind me, checked ahead, the truck's taillights were already gone. I drove like that for 6 miles, then made myself slow down before I put myself in a ditch. At mile 241, there's a wide spot in the shoulder where County Road T bones into the highway. I pulled off, cut my lights, and sat there with the engine idling. I waited 30 minutes. No headlights passed in either direction. Not one. I've thought about that night a lot since. Tried every rational explanation. Pulled off somewhere I didn't notice, but I've told you, there are no exits. Turned around, but I'd have seen his headlights sweeping as he made the turn. Somehow gotten ahead of me, but he passed me going north, and I never saw him again from that direction. The thing that bothers me most isn't the truck. It's what I noticed the second time it passed me. I'd been watching for markings, for anything identifying, and the second pass I was ready. I was looking hard at the driver's window. No face. But I caught something in the reflection of my own running lights off his passenger door, just for a half second as he cleared my cab. The passenger seat. Someone was sitting in it. They were looking back at me. Word count, 1018. Let me back up, because there's a part of the story I skipped over, and it matters. Earlier that night, about 40 miles south of where all this happened, I'd stopped at a turnout to check a low tire pressure warning. Turned out to be a sensor glitch. Tires were fine, but while I was out walking the rig with a flashlight, I noticed a fresh skid mark on the road's shoulder. Black rubber, hard stop, leading off into the ditch. I walked over and shone my light down into it. No car, no debris, but the ground at the bottom was pressed down, disturbed, like something very heavy had been there recently and was now gone. I remember thinking it was odd, filed it away. The county sheriff's department for that area, I looked them up about a week after, because the whole thing was eating at me. I wasn't going to file any kind of report, obviously, what would I say? But I just searched the general area, the route, the dates. Found a news brief, short one, buried in the local paper's online archive, dated 3 days before my run. A commercial truck had left the road on Route 9 near mile marker 220. Driver deceased at the scene. The truck, a Kenworth T680, had been traveling northbound. Cause of crash undetermined. The article mentioned the truck had been reported by another motorist who spotted it already in the ditch. White cab. No markings. I didn't sleep well for about 2 months after that. I still run northern Montana sometimes. Job's a job. But I do not run that particular stretch of Route 9 at night anymore. And if I ever absolutely have to, I don't look in my mirrors past mile 215. Some things you're better off not confirming. Story #2 mile marker 317. The first time I saw him, I thought he was broken down. It was 2009. I was fresh out of my first year of solo driving, running US 287 through Wyoming on a haul from Denver up toward Casper. 2 in the morning, not a cloud in the sky, the kind of clear cold night where the stars look close enough to touch. I had the heat going and a thermos of bad truck stop coffee doing its best. Mile marker 317. Man standing on the right shoulder facing the road, not waving, not holding a phone up to catch a signal, not crouched next to a disabled vehicle. Just standing there with his arms at his sides, facing the highway, watching traffic go by. Except there was no other traffic. Just me. I slowed. You do, instinctively. He was maybe 30 feet from the road, close enough that my headlights lit him up fully before I reached him. Medium height, wearing dark work pants and what looked like a flannel shirt. No coat, and it was well below freezing. No hat. Just standing there, face turned toward me. I couldn't see his features clearly. He was backlit against the dark, and my lights were hitting him from the front, but I had a strong sense that he was looking directly at my cab, not at the truck. At me. I didn't stop. I'm not proud of that, but I didn't. Something in his body language wasn't right. The absolute stillness of him. No one stands that still on the side of a highway in sub-zero temperatures at 2 in the morning and just watches you drive by. I told myself I'd call it in, and I did. I got on the CB and mentioned a pedestrian at 317 to anyone listening. Then called the non-emergency line for the county sheriff when I got a signal 20 minutes later. They said they'd send someone to check. I filed it away. Strange night, Strange sighting. Wyoming's a big empty state, and sometimes people do inexplicable things in big empty places. 4 years later, 2013, same route, different time of year, June, so the nights were short. I was southbound this time, running back toward Denver after a drop in Casper. I spotted mile marker 317 coming up on my right and had a ghost of a memory, just a tickle. Nothing specific. Then I passed it. Man on the left shoulder, my side. Dark pants, flannel shirt, arms at his sides. The same cold hit me that I hadn't felt in 4 years. I was going 68, and I watched him in my driver's mirror as I cleared him. He was turned toward the road, facing my truck. This time I pulled over about a quarter-mile down and sat there with my hazards on, watching my mirrors. Nothing came up behind me. I waited 5 minutes, then reversed slowly with my hazards still running. I know you're not supposed to. I did it anyway. When I got back to the marker, no one was there. Shoulder was empty in both directions as far as I could see. I drove that route maybe a dozen more times over the next 6 years and started paying close attention to that marker. Saw him again in 2015, same description, same posture. 2017, northbound at dusk, just barely light enough to see him standing there. Reported him both times. Both times, nothing came of it. Then I did something I should probably have done years earlier. I mentioned it to a guy named Rennie, who'd been running Wyoming routes since before I had a CDLDL. Older driver, knew every back road in the state. I described what I'd seen at marker 317, and he got very quiet. What'd this guy look like? He asked. I told him. Medium height, dark pants, flannel, no coat, just standing there. Rennie put down his coffee. I've been driving that route since 1987, he said. I've seen that man 4 times. First time was 1991. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't setting me up for a punchline. 4 times in 30 years, he said. Always 317. Always the same. I asked him if he'd ever gotten a good look at the face. He picked his coffee back up and looked out the diner window for a long moment. Then he said, yeah, once. He didn't elaborate. And I had enough sense not to push him, because whatever he'd seen when he got that look had done something to Rennie that the 30 years of driving long Wyoming nights hadn't. I could see it in the set of his jaw, in the way he'd stopped drinking his coffee. I started asking around after that, quietly at truck stops along the 287 corridor. Brought it up the way you bring up ghost stories, casually, not seriously, giving people an easy out. You'd be surprised. 3 other drivers, 1 woman who ran Wyoming twice a week for a freight company, 2 independent guys who didn't know each other, all had variations of the same story, same marker, same figure, different years, different decades in one case. The woman, her name was Pat. She drove a red Mac, told me she'd seen him in 2004 and again in 2019, 15 years apart. She said both times he was wearing the same thing, which was strange because in 15 years she hadn't remembered the detail consciously, but when she saw him the second time, she felt a certainty in her gut. This is the same man I saw 15 years ago. She couldn't explain how she knew, just that she did. The thing that stays with me, she said, is that he doesn't look like he's waiting for help. He doesn't look lost. He looks like he's exactly where he means to be. She paused, like he's watching something. Or watching for something. I did a little research on that stretch of highway, found nothing definitive. A fatal accident near that mile marker in 1978. A westbound vehicle left the road in bad weather, driver killed, no name in the public records I could find. Another incident in the early 90s, nature unclear, 1 person involved, also fatal. I can't tell you what's at mile marker 317. I'm not going to pretend I figured it out, because I haven't. What I can tell you is that I ran that route last spring. Northbound, clear night, just past midnight, and as my headlights swept over that reflective green sign, I made myself look. He was there, standing the same way he always stands, arms down, body still, face toward the road. But this time I was going slower than usual. I'd hit some construction delays and was watching my mirrors, and as I came up on him, I got something I'd never gotten before. A real look at his face. He was younger than I'd always imagined, maybe mid-20s. and I could see, even at that speed, that his eyes were open. They were open and they were fixed on my cab, and for just a fraction of a second, the kind of fraction you can't verify, the kind your brain either records or invents, his lips moved. I don't know what he said. I don't want to know. I requested a route change the following Monday. My dispatcher thought it was about the construction. I let him think that. Some roads belong to the people who never left them. The rest of us are just passing through. Story #3, the convoy without radio storm season in the Texas Panhandle can change your whole worldview in about 45 minutes. I've seen blue sky days go gray-green in the time it takes to fuel a rig, and I've watched funnel clouds scroll across the horizon like they're browsing for somewhere to land. You respect the weather out there, or the weather teaches you why you should. The night of the convoy, I was running I-40 west through the Panhandle, somewhere between Amarillo and Tucumcari. February, late, cold, but not the kind of cold you worry about, the kind that just wants to be miserable without committing to actual ice. The wind was wrong though, low and pushing from a direction it didn't normally push from, and there was a quality to the sky, even at night, that made me uneasy. That orange-gray haze low on the horizon that means something large is reorganizing itself nearby. NOAA came through on my weather radio around 11 p.m. Severe thunderstorm warning, possible rotation. Recommended people get off the road. I noted the warning, checked my delivery window, and kept going. 6 hours to Albuquerque. I wasn't getting paid to park in Amarillo. The trucks appeared out of nowhere about 20 minutes after the warning. I came over a low rise, and there they were, 3 semis running in a tight line in the right lane. Running lights all the way up, same spacing, like they'd been pre-choreographed. It was a comfort, honestly. Convoy driving in bad weather is practical. You can see road debris earlier, you have more visibility to other traffic, you can help each other if someone goes down. I pulled in behind the last truck and adjusted my speed to match the group. Southside convoy, you got a new tail, I said on channel 19. You mind some company to New Mexico? No response. Static. I assumed channel 19 was just crowded or the storm was causing interference, which it can. Switched to 17, tried there. Nothing. Went all the way down to channel 14. Came back up through the channels one by one. Picked up a faint signal, what sounded like a talk radio program for about 10 seconds, then static. Nothing from the trucks in front of me. It was annoying, but not alarming. I settled in and followed. About 30 miles in, the storm hit. Not gradually, like someone opened a door. Rain so hard the wipers were useless on high. Lightning close enough that the thunder was simultaneous with the flash. Wind gusts that pushed my whole rig sideways in the lane. I pulled my speed down to 45, then 40. The 3 trucks ahead of me didn't vary their speed at all. Held steady, didn't waver. That started to bother me. Professional drivers slow in storms. It's not optional, it's survival. Even good drivers in fully loaded rigs back it down in this kind of visibility. These 3 were rolling like it was a clear Tuesday afternoon. Same spacing, same speed, same heading. Convoy, please acknowledge, I said on the radio. Tried every channel I could think of. Nothing. I started to drop back. Put another 100 yards between me and the last trailer. The problem was that in the rain I needed their taillights. They were the only reference point I had for where the road was, so I couldn't drop back too far. We passed mile marker 187 and a rest area entrance. All 3 trucks went by the entrance without slowing. I know because I was watching the entrance specifically, considering pulling in to wait out the storm. The 3 red taillights in front of me just kept going. An hour into the storm, the lightning gave me something I hadn't expected. It lit up the road in a full, white, sustained flash. The kind that lasts a full second. The kind that's almost like daylight. In that second, I saw the 3 trailers ahead of me. All 3 were unmarked. Not no specific company logo. I mean no dot numbers, no placards, no reflective tape along the bottom, no EC bumper markings, just plain dark surfaces. Every commercial trailer on an American highway is required to have this stuff. You get pulled over and cited if you don't. These trailers had nothing. I moved to the left lane and accelerated. I wanted to see the cabs. It took me longer than it should have because they were moving faster than I'd realized, maybe 50, and in this storm that was dangerous. I got up alongside the last truck's trailer, then its cab. Regular cab, dark windows, no light inside, couldn't see a driver. That's not unusual at highway speed in a storm at night, but something about it joined up with the blank trailer in a way I didn't like. I pushed up to the middle truck. Same thing. Dark cab, nothing visible inside. By the time I pulled alongside the lead truck, my hands were white on the wheel. I told myself I was going to look at the cab, see a normal person driving, feel stupid, and drop back. I pulled even with the lead truck's cab. The window was dark, but what was inside, what I was almost certain I could see, wasn't a driver's seat and a steering wheel. It looked empty. Not dark cab empty, physically empty, like looking at a shell. Lightning hit close and I flinched hard, jerked my wheel, nearly went into the ditch, pulled it back, heart going like a piston. By the time I had my truck under control and looked at where the lead truck had been, the road was empty. 3 semis vanished on a straight highway in a flat panhandle rainstorm. No brake lights, no turn signals, no exit. They were there and then they were not there. I drove very slowly to the next rest area, which was about 4 miles up, and I parked. Kept my lights on. Sat with the engine running and the storm coming apart around me, and tried to think through what could explain what I'd seen. An hour later, when the storm had backed off enough to think clearly, I got back on the CB. Actually reached another trucker this time, guy running eastbound 30 miles ahead of where I'd been. I described what I'd seen. The 3 trucks. The unmarked trailers. Them disappearing. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You were on I-40 West tonight? Through the Panhandle?" "Still am," I said. Another pause. "I passed 3 trucks about 2 hours ago, going the opposite direction. Westbound, unmarked trailers. Tried to raise them on the radio. Couldn't get anything." He paused again. I figured it was the storm. I asked him what made him mention it. "Because they passed me," he said slowly, and I looked in my mirror, and about a mile back I couldn't see them anymore. I've been thinking about it since. I've told this story exactly twice before tonight. Both times the other person said the same thing. Bad visibility in a storm. Easy to lose trucks. And they're right, that's probably the explanation. But I keep coming back to one thing I haven't mentioned yet. When the lightning lit up those 3 trailers and I saw they had no markings, I also caught something else in that white sustained flash. The mud flaps on all 3 trailers. Every rig running in wet weather collects road spray, kicks up grime on the mud flaps. It's unavoidable. After an hour in a Texas panhandle rainstorm, those mud flaps should have been caked. They were clean, completely clean, like those trailers had never touched a wet road in their lives. Story #for the passenger in my mirror. I want to start by saying I'm not a person who has ever believed in anything like this. I don't read horoscopes. I don't think buildings have energy. I've never told a ghost story at a campfire and meant it. That's not who I am. What I'm about to describe is the reason I'm no longer sure who I am. I bought the truck second-hand. 12-year-old Freightliner Cascadia with high miles but a solid engine, clean title, priced right. Previous owner had put good money into the maintenance and cut corners on literally everything else. Interior was rough, paint was chipped, the sleeper curtain was held up with binder clips. Didn't matter to me. It drove well, and the price was right. The first time I saw it in the mirror, I was 3 weeks into owning the truck. I was on I-80 westbound through Nebraska, long flat run. Night, I'd been going for about 6 hours and was in that groove where your body drives and your mind goes somewhere else. I reached up to adjust my rearview mirror, not the door mirrors, the interior one that lets you see into the sleeper. And in the glass, I saw someone sitting on my bunk. I'm going to slow down here because the detail matters. It wasn't a vague shape, it wasn't a shadow, it was a person. Seated, facing forward toward the cab. Dark clothing, head slightly bowed. I hit the brake. Not a panic stop, but a firm deceleration, enough to jerk. I turned around in my seat. The sleeper was empty. I have a standard curtain arrangement. You pull the curtain to separate the sleeper from the cab. I never keep it pulled when I'm driving alone. The bunk was empty, the space was empty, nothing there. I turned on the sleeper light and looked at every corner. Nothing. My heart was going. I told myself it was highway hypnosis, a trick of tired eyes. I'd been driving 6 hours. It happens. I rolled down my window, let the cold air in, drank some water, turned on the radio loud. Kept going. 2 nights later, I-76 through Colorado. And I was not tired this time, I was fresh. 4 hours into a 12-hour haul, good sleep behind me. I glanced up at the interior mirror to check the sleeper out of habit. Someone was sitting on my bunk. Same position, same dark clothing, head bowed. This time I kept my eyes on the road and took stock of what I was seeing. I told myself to describe it out loud, like a report. Sitting figure on the bunk near the cab side wall. Dark jacket or shirt, short hair or no visible hair under something. Head angled down. I said it out loud, like a radio call, and I looked at the image in the mirror for a full 5 seconds before I turned around. The sleeper was empty. I pulled over at the next ramp and physically went into the sleeper, checked under the bunk, checked the small closet space, opened every compartment. Nothing, no one. I want to describe the quality of what I was seeing in the mirror. Because it's important, it didn't look like a ghost in the movie sense. It looked like a person who'd climbed in while I wasn't watching and made themselves comfortable. Solid, dimensioned, real looking. The only reason I knew something was wrong, apart from the fact that no one could have gotten into a moving truck on the interstate, was the way they were sitting. Completely still. Not the kind of still that means someone's sleeping or resting. The kind of still that means something isn't functioning the way a living thing functions. It went on for 2 months. I started keeping a log. Dates, locations, times. It happened 17 times over 61 days. Always in the interior mirror. Never in the door mirrors. Never in any reflective surface outside the truck. Only through that one mirror, looking back into the sleeper. I tried changing things. New mirror. The figure appeared in the new mirror. I drove with the sleeper curtain pulled closed. Didn't matter. Through the gap I could see it in the mirror. I had a pastor I barely knew come look at the truck. He didn't say anything useful. I had the rig cleaned inside and out, professionally. The 17th time was the last time, and it was different from all the others. I was parked at a Flying J outside of Cheyenne. Middle of the night, I'd stopped for fuel and a nap. I was about to climb into the sleeper when I caught the figure in the mirror from the cab. It was closer, not on the bunk. It was standing, not sitting, right behind the curtain gap. Closer to the front of the sleeper, almost at the dividing line between sleeper and cab. I made myself stay still and look. Because by this point I'd spent 2 months terrified, and I was furious about it. I was furious at whatever this was, and I made myself look at it in the mirror instead of spinning around. The head came up. I hadn't seen the face in any of the previous 16 incidents. The head had always been down. Now it came up slowly, and I was watching in the mirror, watching a reflection of a reflection, in a way, since the interior mirror was showing me the sleeper space behind me, and the face turned toward me. I don't know how to write what I saw. I've tried several times. What I'll say is that the face was not what I expected. It wasn't monstrous. It wasn't decomposed or horrible. It was just a face, pale, with eyes that were open and watching me. It looked like it knew me. I sold the truck the following month, took a loss, never looked back. I found out later, much later, through a guy who knew the guy I'd bought the truck from, that the previous owner's brother-in-law had died in that sleeper. Carbon monoxide leak from a corroded exhaust fitting. They'd found him in the morning. He'd been on the bunk. Head bowed. I think about that a lot. I think about how he was sitting the same way every single time until that last night. Until he stood up. Until he turned around. I don't know why it stopped after that. I don't know what changed. Maybe he just wanted to be seen. Story #5, the road that wasn't on the map. I've been driving for 22 years, and I have never, before or since, done what I did that night, which is follow a GPS into a situation that nothing in my experience had prepared me for. I was hauling auto parts from a distribution center in Louisville down to a dealership in Memphis. Familiar enough route, I 65 south, jog over to 412, easy run. I'd done versions of it dozens of times. But my normal GPS had died. I mean, just bricked itself completely, and I was running the backup app on my phone mounted to the dash. Same roads, different interface. I wasn't thrilled, but I wasn't worried. The reroute happened at 1:17 a.m. I remember the time because it woke me out of a mild mental haze, and I checked the clock. The GPS chimed, that little notification sound, and the route line on the screen shifted. Route updated, the female voice said. Faster route available. I glanced at the screen. It was showing me a turnoff about 2 miles ahead onto what looked like a state highway. The screen showed a blue line, highway colored, clean, looked legitimate. And it was showing me saving 43 minutes, which on a run that tight felt significant. I took the turn. The road was paved. That matters because a lot of the faster routes these apps find are half gravel and they don't warn you. This was blacktop, 2 lanes, lit by my headlights and nothing else. Trees on both sides close to the road. Not forest exactly, more like the edges of farmland, the windbreaks and woodlot borders you find all through western Tennessee. The road was in reasonable shape too, some cracking in age, but not a road that hadn't been used in years. For the first 15 minutes, nothing unusual. I was watching the GP's route line and it was clean, just a long south-running road with a bend or two. No intersections, no indicated stops. Then the road entered the trees. I mean that in a specific way. Up to that point, the trees were at the edges of cleared land. Then the cleared land ended, the fields disappeared, and both sides of the road became dense forest. Not Tennessee scrub, actual old growth density, the kind you don't see much of in the agricultural parts of the state. The road narrowed slightly. My headlights hit the tree line close on both sides. I checked the GPS, still showing my position moving south on the blue route line, but I noticed something that made me look twice. There were no road labels anywhere on the screen. Usually you get a county road number, a state route number, something. The road I was on had no designation. It was just a blue line with my position dot crawling along it. I tried to find the road on the map manually, zoomed out, moved around. The blue line was there, clearly drawn, but nothing around it matched. None of the surrounding roads were labeled correctly. It was like the GPS was showing me a road that existed in a different version of the map than the one everything else was drawn on. A reasonable person would have turned around at that point. I'm not sure I was being reasonable. I was tired, I was ahead of schedule counting the supposed time savings, and the road was fine. There was nothing actually wrong with the road. Except there were no mile markers. I hadn't noticed that right away, but about 25 minutes in, I realized I hadn't seen a single mile marker, a single reflective post, a single road sign. Not a speed limit, not a curve warning, not a county line marker, nothing. A road entirely stripped of all official signage. I slowed down, dropped to about 40. The trees were very close now. My running lights caught the trunks strobing past on both sides. The road ahead was a tunnel of light, and beyond the tunnel was pure black. No visible sky. I had the sudden, specific feeling that the trees weren't just along the road, they were above it, that I was inside something. I tried my CB, got nothing, which wasn't surprising given the tree cover and the likely absence of nearby traffic. Tried to pull up a map on my phone while I drove. No signal, not low signal, no signal at all. I held it up to different positions in the cab. Nothing. The GPS was still running though, still showing me the blue line, still updating my position. I made the decision to turn around, found a slightly wider section of road, got the truck turned, headed back north. The GPS complained and rerouted and I ignored it, just drove north until I could get back to familiar road. The drive back took 40 minutes. The drive in had taken 25. Same road. Same direction on the compass. I had a dash compass and it was consistent. I drove north for 40 minutes. On the same road it had taken me 25 minutes to cover going south. The math doesn't work. I can't explain the math. When I finally got back to I-65, emerged from that tree-lined road onto the highway like surfacing from water. I sat there for 10 minutes with my hazards on and just breathed. I reported the GP's app. I tried to show them the route I'd been given, and it appeared as a straight north-south road with no designation. I asked if they could identify it. They got back to me a week later and said there was no maintained public road matching that GP's trace in the area. They thought it might have been an old logging road that had mistakenly been mapped in their system. They apologized and said it had been removed. I asked them how an old logging road ends up in a navigation database with a clear 4-lane blacktop rendering and a 43-minute time saving calculation. They didn't have an answer for that. Last year I drove through that part of Tennessee again. Midday this time. I tried to find the turn off. There's nothing there. Farmland right to the tree line. No road. No break in the fence rows. No indication that anything ever turned off the highway at that spot. I don't know what road I was on. I don't know what was in those trees. I don't know why the drive back took longer than the drive in. But I think about the GPS, still running, still updating my position, still drawing me along that blue line with cheerful confidence. What if it knew something I didn't? What if that reroute wasn't a glitch? What if it was trying to tell me I was already somewhere I shouldn't be, and that getting out was going to take longer than getting in? Story has 6 exit 44. There's a thing that happens when you've been driving for too many hours in too few days. Your brain starts protecting itself by switching off the parts that aren't strictly necessary. Personality, humor, patience, any kind of emotional nuance, they all go first. What's left is a very narrow band operator who sees road, checks speed, watches fuel, and keeps the truck between the lines. I've been in that state many times. I know what it feels like, and I know the difference between it and what happened on I-94 in Wisconsin. I want to be clear about that, because the first response everyone has is, "You were tired." And sure, yes, I'd been on the road for 11 hours, but I was not impaired. I was paying attention. I know the difference between highway hypnosis and reality, because I've experienced highway hypnosis many times, and it has never been like this. I was eastbound on I-94, running from the Twin Cities toward Milwaukee, roughly 250 miles, a route I'd done enough times that I drove it partly from muscle memory. The night was clear, the road was good, and I had about 120 miles left when I first saw exit 44. Green sign, white lettering, standard Wisconsin interstate exit sign. Exit 44, County Road F, 1 mile. I noted it the way you note all signs and kept going. Exit 44, County Road F, mile. Exit 44. I took the exit ramp in my peripheral vision and kept going, because I wasn't taking that exit. Noted it and moved on. 12 minutes later, I checked the clock specifically because the spacing felt wrong. I passed exit 44 again. Same sign. Same green, same white letters. Exit 44, County Road F, 1 mile. Then the half-mile sign. Then the exit. I noted the time, 2:06 a.m. I told myself I'd miscounted. Thought I'd passed an exit, maybe hadn't. These things happen. I set my odometer trip counter and drove. 12 minutes. Exactly 12 minutes. Exit 44, County Road F, 1 mile. I felt the cold that starts in your stomach and moves upward. I did not take the exit. I kept driving. I was very focused now. I watched the odometer. The exits I was passing should have been numbered in the 60s or 7s by now. I'd been driving east. Exit numbers go up, that's how it works. Exit 44. Again, I got on the CB. Eastbound 94, anyone copy? What exit are you near? A trucker came back after a moment. He was westbound. He said he was just past exit 67. That meant I should have been near 65, 66, somewhere in there. I was not. I was watching a sign for exit 44 slide past for the 4th time. You copy that 94 eastbound? The westbound driver said. You said you had a copy request? Yeah, I said. I'm eastbound on 94. What's exit 44? Brief silence. County Road F, down near Toma area. You a ways back? I should be past 60, I said. But I keep seeing the same sign. Another pause. Say again? I said it again. He said nothing for a moment then, brother. I'd pull over and get some rest. I almost did. But I was watching my instruments, my speed, my odometer. Everything was behaving normally. I was covering ground. Fuel was going down at the right rate. The truck was behaving like a truck driving on a road at normal speed should behave. There was no stutter, no loop, no warp, just the same green sign arriving in my headlights every 12 minutes. On the 6th time, I took the exit. I didn't plan to. When I saw the sign coming up and felt the familiar rhythm of those 12 minutes, something in me decided I was done being taken past it. I put on my turn signal and took the ramp. County Road F was a 2-lane county road. Dark, empty, heading south. I drove about a mile down it, then found a wide spot and stopped. Got out of the truck. The air was cold and smelled like farm fields and diesel. Normal, I walked around the rig, checked the tires, looked at the sky. Stars, Wisconsin night. Nothing wrong. I got back in and turned around. Went back up the ramp to the interstate. Merged east. Exit 67 was the next exit I saw. Not 45, not 46. 67, I jumped 23 exits. I don't know how to account for the time. I've done the math many ways. If I covered that distance at highway speed, the time and fuel don't line up with being stuck near exit 44. If I didn't cover the distance, if I somehow looped, the odometer doesn't match. I've talked to other drivers who've run 94 regularly. Three over the course of 2 years of casual asking, have told me something strange happened to them in the Toma area. One woman said she couldn't find an exit she was supposed to take, and then found herself 20 miles further east than she expected. One guy said he drove for what felt like an hour and his odometer barely moved. I don't know what exit 44 is. I don't know why that stretch of highway near Toma does what it does. I've looked into it, and there's nothing. No stories, no documented phenomenon, no local legend I could find. Just three strangers with pieces of the same story. And a stretch of dark Wisconsin interstate that quietly swallows time and hands it back without explanation. I've taken a different route through Wisconsin ever since. I don't exit at 44. And I don't stay on the road long enough to find out if it wants me to. Story #7 the truck stop at 213 this happened to me in Utah in 2018, and I haven't told very many people about it because the ones I did tell either thought I was joking or thought I needed sleep, and honestly both of those responses make me feel worse than keeping it to myself. I was running US 6 through central Utah. If you've never driven US 6 through the Book Cliffs and the San Rafael Desert, it's one of the most isolated roads in the continental United States. At night, it's a different kind of alone. The sky is enormous and there's almost no light pollution, so you get this sense of driving through an ink drawing, a black landscape under a million white stars. It's beautiful, and it's also the kind of place where you feel your smallness very acutely. I'd been on the road for about 8 hours, and I was flagging. Not unsafe, but I needed coffee and ideally 10 minutes out of the cab. The problem is that US 6 through that section of Utah has almost nothing. Small towns, closed gas stations, the occasional rest area. I wasn't expecting to find anything between Helper and Price, and I'd resigned myself to pressing through. The lights appeared around a long bend. I'll say immediately that seeing a truck stop out there was not in itself impossible. I didn't know every business on that road, and they come and go. I wasn't operating from a memory of what should have been there. So when I saw the lit up lot, the big overhead sign, the half-dozen trucks already parked, I felt relief, not suspicion. I signaled and pulled in. It was well lit. Bright canopy over the fuel islands, a clean low building with a diner and store, the kind of setup you'd see at any decent truck stop chain in the country. I parked, cut the engine, and sat for a second just appreciating the fact that I'd found a place. Checked the time on my dash, 2:13 a.m. Inside was warm and well lit, country music playing low on speakers. A woman behind the counter, 50s, short gray hair, the demeanor of someone who'd worked the counter for years, smiled when I came in. "Coffee?" she said. "Please," I said. There were 4 other people in the place. 2 truckers at a corner table with food in front of them, not talking much, a younger guy at the counter with a Coke, a woman in a booth near the window looking at her phone. Normal, all of it was completely normal. The coffee was good. I used the restroom, which was clean, bought a granola bar and a bottle of water. I spent maybe 25 minutes in there. The whole time, nothing wrong. The counter woman refilled my coffee once without being asked. One of the truckers at the corner table nodded when I made eye contact. Regular truck stop, regular night. I walked back to my rig at 2:38 a.m. and pulled back onto US 6, 280 miles later. I was having breakfast in a diner outside of Denver, and I mentioned to my waitress that the truck stop on US 6 through the Utah desert was better than expected. She looked up the street and said, "What truck stop is that?" I described it. She frowned, said she'd driven that road recently and didn't remember seeing anything like that. I shrugged it off. The delivery was done, and I was running back towards Salt Lake 2 days later on the same road. I was looking for the truck stop, not because I needed it, just to confirm it, to drive past it in the daylight and know it was real. I never found it. I drove US 6 start to finish in daylight, going slowly, looking, no truck stop. Not even the ghost of one, no lot, no building, no signage posts where signs had been removed, no concrete pad, nothing at that location or anywhere near it that matched what I'd stopped at. I went further. I called the Utah DOT and asked about commercial operations along that corridor. The woman I spoke to was helpful. She went through what they had for licensed commercial truck stops on US 6. She found nothing in the section I described. A few small operations in the towns at either end, nothing in between. Could something have closed recently? I asked. We still have the location on file, she said. Permits and property don't just vanish. Pause. When were you there? I told her. She said she'd look into it and call me back. She didn't call back, and when I tried the number again a week later, I got a different person who had no record of my inquiry. I've looked at satellite imagery of that road since then. I've gone over it in sections. There's nothing there that matches what I stopped at. Not now, and not visible in older imagery I could access either. I found images dating back several years. The area where I stopped is empty desert in every one. Here's what I keep coming back to. The coffee was hot. The granola bar had a real wrapper, a brand name, a barcode. The woman had a face I could describe in detail, the small earrings she was wearing, the reading glasses pushed up on her head, the way she poured coffee with her left hand. I was there for 25 minutes, and I was not impaired, not asleep, not dreaming. I had a receipt in my pocket when I found my wallet that night. I have the receipt. I've kept it. It's from a register system, a printed thermal receipt with items and a total. The store name at the top of the receipt is a string of characters I've never been able to identify. Not a chain name, not a local name, something that doesn't correspond to any business I can find. Whatever that place was, it didn't need to be found. It just needed to be there for the people who needed it when they needed it. I hope that's all it was. I try not to think about the alternative. Story #8, the voice from the way station. I want to tell you this clearly and chronologically because I get tangled up when I try to tell it any other way. It happened over 3 nights in November on I-82 in Washington State, and by the time it was done, 4 other drivers had heard the same thing I heard. Way stations are strange at the best of times. Most of them are fine. You pull in, they check your weight and credentials, you pull out. Simple, but closed way stations have a different quality. When a station is dark, lights off, booths empty, the big lead sign saying closed, bypass, and you're running past it at 2 in the morning, there's something about all that structure built for purpose, just sitting there dormant that triggers a low-grade unease, like a stopped clock. The station on I-82 eastbound between Yakima and Ellensburg had been closed for about 2 years for renovations. Construction was ongoing, or supposed to be. It was dark every time I passed it, which was regularly. I run produce out of the Yakima Valley East, sometimes twice a week in harvest season. The first night I heard the voice, I almost convinced myself it was interference. I was eastbound, coming up on the station around 1 a.m., dark as expected. The big commercial rig scale was just a dark platform in my headlights as I passed, and then the CB came on. Not a truck, not a driver, not the garbled crosstalk you get from distant channels bleeding in. A voice. Single voice, clearly recorded, the quality of an old speaker system, that slight tinny edge to it. Attention all northbound commercial vehicles. I reached over and turned up the volume. Weight restrictions in effect on Route 97 from November through March. Drivers are advised to maintain logs. Inspection checkpoint active at mile 143. Thank you for your compliance. I keyed my mic. Say again? Who's on channel? Static? I sat with it for a few miles. The voice had been clearly audible, on channel 19. It sounded like the kind of routing announcement that way stations sometimes broadcast, formatted correctly, using the right terminology, but the content was wrong. Route 97 wasn't northbound from where I was. Mile 143 on 97 doesn't correlate to anything I know, and that station was closed. 3 nights later, I came back eastbound, and it happened again. Same voice, same recording quality. This time the message was different. Attention all commercial operators. Weather event anticipated on the Snoqualmie Pass. All vehicles with cargo rated Class 7 or above should delay passage. Chains required above 2,000 feet. Next advisory at 0300. I checked the weather. Clear across the passes. Had been for days. I started asking around the Yakima driver community. Mentioned the closed station. Mentioned the CB transmissions. 2 guys had heard it. One on the same night I'd heard the second message. One the week before. I thought it was someone playing with a radio, said the one who'd heard it first. Some kid with a base station. But the signal was clean. Too clean for a handheld. The third driver who'd heard it was a woman named Dana who ran refrigerated loads out of Yakima 3 times a week. She'd heard it twice in the same night, the same message each time. Attention. Proceed with caution. The road ahead has changed. That was all. No details. No clarifying information. Just that. Proceed with caution. The road ahead has changed. The fourth driver hadn't heard a voice. He'd heard something else on the CB as he passed the closed station. Not words, exactly, but a pattern, a rhythm. He described it as sounding like someone tapping on a mic. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause, tap. Like Morse code, he said, except not any Morse code I recognized. I want to be straight about what the rational explanation is. Someone could have had a transmitter inside that closed station, a powerful one, illegal to operate but technically possible, and could have been broadcasting for any number of reasons. Someone could have set up an automated system that triggered on passing traffic. The messages had internal consistency if not external relevance. But here's what I can't account for. One night in late November, I passed the station at my usual time and the voice came on again. I'd started recording these, had my phone propped against the dash set to voice memo just in case. I have the recording. The voice said, "Attention. Driver in the blue Freightliner. Your delivery window has closed. The recipient is no longer at the destination. I drive a blue Freightliner." I was the only truck within visible distance in either direction. I called my dispatch. The delivery was fine, destination confirmed, no changes, everything was normal on the other end. I played the recording back 3 times, parked in a rest area. Clear as a call from a friend. Specific, directed, how does a recording, automated, preset, triggered by passing traffic. Know what color your truck is? How does it know to call out one specific driver? I haven't passed that station since. I take the alternate route north now, which costs me 20 minutes each way. My dispatcher thinks it's because of road conditions on the pass. I haven't corrected him. But I'll tell you this much, and I haven't told anyone else this part, the recording I made of that voice. I've listened to it maybe 30 times now. Each time I hear the same message. Except once. Once near the end of the recording, after the message ends, there are about 4 seconds of silence before the CB noise comes back. And in that silence, if you listen close enough with headphones, you can hear something. Breathing, story #9 the last truck in the Q border crossings are their own world. I've done the commercial crossing at several points along the northern border. Customs declarations, inspection queues, the wait. They run 24 hours at the big crossings, but the small ones close at night, and even at the ones that stay open, 2 or 3 in the morning has a quality to it that no other time does. A stillness. The feeling of waiting in a place that isn't quite one country or the other. The crossing where this happened is a small commercial crossing in a rural stretch of Montana. I won't name it because it's a real place and I don't want to bring attention to it. It's the kind of crossing that handles maybe a dozen trucks a night. Small booth, 1 lane, each direction, a modest inspection bay. The officers are professional but relaxed. The way people are when they're not expecting anything unusual. I was northbound, heading into Canada, running a load of machinery parts. It was around 2:45 a.m. There were 2 trucks ahead of me in the queue, and when I pulled up and stopped, I became the 3rd truck, the end of the line. I do something I've done at every crossing since my first year driving. I look in my mirrors when I stop in a queue, just to see what's behind me, what the backup looks like, where I sit. It's habit. A truck had pulled in behind me, 4th in line now. Good, meant the crossing was moving, people were working. I noted it and went back to my documents, getting the declaration paperwork straight. 15 minutes passed. The first truck cleared the booth and moved into Canada. Now there were 3 of us. I moved up, checked my mirrors. The truck behind me hadn't moved. 4th truck in the queue was still sitting where it had been when it arrived. Fine, you don't always creep forward right away. Another 15 minutes. 2nd truck cleared. I was now at the booth, the officer taking my paperwork, professional exchange, routine questions. While he ran my credentials, I glanced in my mirror. The truck that had been 4th last in line was still in the same position. The 3rd truck, the one that had been between me and the last truck, was gone. That stopped me. The 3rd truck had been between me and the last truck. If the 3rd truck had cleared the booth and gone through, I would have seen its lights in my mirror as it pulled up, would have heard it at the booth beside me. There was only 1 lane, and the 4th truck hadn't moved forward to fill the gap. It was still sitting where it had been when I'd first seen it, maybe 80 yards back and between me and it. The spot where the 3rd truck had been was simply empty. The border officer handed back my documents and asked if everything was alright. "Truck behind me," I said. "Did the one that was here before me clear already?" He looked past my cab toward the queue. His expression shifted in a way I couldn't read at the time. "There's only 1 truck in my lane right now," he said. "That one back there." I looked in my mirror again. 1 truck, 80 yards back, sitting still. "There were 2 trucks between me and that one when I pulled up," I said. He looked at me steadily. "We've had 2 vehicles through this crossing in the last 40 minutes, he said. "You and 1 pickup truck." "I was 3rd in the queue," I said. He said nothing for a moment. "Then, sir, you pulled up to this crossing at 3:02 a.m. You were the first vehicle in my queue. I know what I saw. I sat there for 45 minutes in that line. I watched 2 trucks ahead of me clear the crossing. I have a specific memory of their taillights going through the barrier rising and falling. I looked in my mirror one more time. The truck was there. The officer stamped my documents and waved me through. I went. You don't argue with border officers over logistics. But as I pulled through the barrier and into Canada, I looked in my mirrors one last time. The truck hadn't moved. It was still sitting 80 yards back, engine running. I could see the exhaust, lights on in the queue. I drove about 3 miles into Canada before I pulled over on a side road and sat. I thought through everything. I was not confused about having waited in a queue. I had documentary evidence. The timestamp on my crossing paperwork was 3:02 a.m., but I'd been stopped and waiting since 2:45. That 17 minutes is accounted for in my log. I was stationary in a queue for 17 minutes. And 2 trucks were ahead of me. 2 trucks that apparently didn't exist. But here's the thing that has genuinely never let me go. The truck that was behind me. The last truck in the queue. The officer hadn't flagged it, hadn't waved it up, hadn't seemed concerned by it sitting 80 yards back with its engine running. If I was the first truck in the queue when I arrived, what was that? I've thought about it from every angle. Truck waiting for a different lane, but there's only 1 lane for commercial traffic northbound. Broken down, but the engine was running. Waiting for something. But what? At a border crossing at 3 a.m.? And why hadn't it moved the entire time I was there? I asked a colleague who runs the northern border crossings regularly. Described the location, the night, the situation. He was quiet for a moment. That crossing's had a reputation for years, he said slowly. Drivers say you'll sometimes see a truck in the queue that isn't really there. It's been going around the community forever. I asked what people thought it was. He shrugged. They say it's the same truck, always the same description, always the last in the queue, always running, never moving. He looked at me, always watching the crossing. He said one more thing before we went our separate ways. He said drivers who work that crossing, the officers who staff it overnight, have been asked about it. And the ones who've been there long enough, the ones who've done enough midnight shifts at that little booth in the middle of the Montana dark, give the same answer. They say sometimes there's a truck in the queue, and sometimes they try to wave it forward, and it never comes. And no matter how many times they see it, no matter how many years they've worked that crossing, they never wave at it twice.